Hello there, welcome to Head to Head. It's time again to take a look at the state of the nation and of course the state of the union. My name is Victor Ayara. I have as my guest on this edition of Head to Head Mr. Tony Nnadi, Secretary Change Nigeria and also Secretary Lower Niger Congress. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Victor.
Now, the elections of 2011 have been adjudged the most in recent history of Nigeria, the most successful, the freest and the most credible. What is your opinion on this?
Why the bloodshed? It's yes, free, fair, credible. Why blood all over the place? Has it stopped? You remember that before the election, my organization had tried to prevail on the authorities to defer the elections so that we can go to the foundations of the Nigerian Union to address the cause of the recurrent bloodshed that trailed, because there was no way, if Buhari was declared the winner of the election, of course men will have kicked because they so threatened. So either way, in which kind of democracy will you have to harvest this volume of blood because you were doing an election? So something, those who want to call it free, fair, credible can go ahead and do so. As far as I'm concerned, what happened will not pass for an election in a democracy.
So what you're saying in a sense is that you do not agree with those that say that the elections were free and fair?
The election, let's not mix it up. The election was free and fair, you know, to the extent of people being, compared with the last 3-4 exercises, to the extent that people actually went out and voted. But the reason we were asking for elections, because it is on Nigeria that the winner will preside. There is a president that has been announced winner now from an election that has come out as free and fair. But there are people burning and killing and saying they do not believe in democracy as a form of government, and Mr. President will have to preside over those people. And they are spread across a vast territory, portion of the northernmost flank of Nigeria, and we are saying that we are living too dangerously. We don't have a democracy in place over which you can now be talking about free and fair elections. For us, it is a very, it is a secondary, it goes to no issue to say you've had a free and fair election, yet, you know, we live in fear of massive violence.
So are you now telling us that it is not also possible that the people who are actually perpetrating the violence are those ones who are not comfortable with the outcome of that election and who feel that they should have gotten something that they didn't get?
I wish it was just that, but the matter is worse than that and deeper than that. They were not protesting, if you listen to them, they were not protesting that their candidate had won and somebody else was declared winner. They were saying they did not believe in democracy as a form of government. If you interpret it further, they were saying that there was no, they feel that their crown prince, Buhari, was being subjected to some terrible indignity to now be competing with one Jonathan from Otoke over who will preside on Nigeria. And if we look back in history, I don't know why we have such a short communal memory. If we look back in history to 1960, the very week of independence, their champion, the Sadana, the premier of northern region of the time, I'm trying to interpret their action, because if we don't interpret it correctly, we are heading to a terrible storm, because we've been through it before in 1966. Now, their champion, 1 week after independence, at the time the rest of the country were popping champagne that they have recovered their independence from Britain, the Sadana was telling his lieutenants a different story, and I quote him. He says to them, the new nation Nigeria should be an estate of our great-grandfather Osman Danfodio. That on no account should that be allowed to change? That we will use the minorities of the North as willing tools and use and the South as conquered territory. That they should not be allowed, the South should not be allowed to preside over them, and that neither should the rest of the people be allowed any control over their future. It was reported in the Parrot newspaper of 12th October 1960. Tribune newspaper had occasion to recall it on the 13th of November 2002. That was a battle script. That was a mission statement. And by that, while the rest of the country thought they had become independent, what Sedona was telling his people that this was the estate of their great-grandfather. Meaning that Nigeria, your definition of Nigeria and mine is totally different from the definition of those who were burning down the parts of the country where those things happened. They were protesting the fact that things had degenerated to the point where the slaves from this conquered territory and their middle belt upstarts, because those ones had been obedient servants all these years, the Gowons and the Danjumas of this world, you know, that they are rising up in the name of some stupid democracy to gang up, to choke them out of their inheritance. That is what is at stake. Therefore, like we've been saying all these 5-6 years past, there is no Nigeria in place over which anybody can preside peacefully. I did not say over which anybody can preside peacefully, because while the rest of the people are thinking they are building a democracy on a settled Nigeria, the reality is that there are two Nigerias.
Okay, we're talking about the State of the Union. We're talking about the state of the nation. If you're just joining us, the program is head-to-head, and I have seated in front of me Mr. Tony Nnadi, who is the Secretary, Change Nigeria, and also the Secretary of Lower Niger Congress. Now, if these things that you have noted, if we are to go by it, what is the agenda for the present administration, especially as you know, at the national and state levels where they've just taken oaths of office? How do we address this issue, especially when you know that lives and properties are actually lost when we have post-election violence or violence of any sort?
You know, maybe because of my science background, I like to proceed like doctors would do: diagnosis, prescription, and treatment. Mr. President should look at, you know, the pattern of voting. The mandate he got goes beyond just going to continue what was being done before. The mandate he got was one for change. Who defines that change? It certainly cannot be to go continue some 7-point agenda or some vision 2020 of the blind. That mandate, if we were allowed to interpret it, is for him to call a meeting of the owners of Nigeria to decide first that they want to continue in that union and the terms upon which that will be continued, and all of those will be reduced into a document called the Constitution. Because what we have in place now, because those who think there's a democracy that is being grown, we don't have any democracy in place upon which he can develop a program.
So if you say we don't have a democracy, what do we have now?
We have a feudal. What we have in place is what I could call a dispersed feudal state. Dispersed because there's no one King Hassan or King Abdullahi, sitting over it. But proceeding from that battle script of 1960, we now have a constitution in place that has reduced us to a feudal society. All of why Nigeria is upside down is that we thought we were building on a democratic foundation at a time we do not have. Mr.
Nnadi, I want to ask you, if the United States of America, if the United Nations, if other countries that make up, the Commonwealth, of course, the international community, were to say that Nigeria is improving since 1999 and consolidating on its democracy, Why do you choose to say Nigeria is not a democracy, especially when we just had an election and people are taking offices? Are we saying, can we compare what we have now to the military era that preceded what this form of government we have now?
Before 1999, I tell you most certainly we were closer to democracy than we are now. Because at that time, it was clear to everybody, and even the soldiers, that they had to dress away from the government house, and democracy will come. But to now have what we have in place now, wearing the garb of democracy, 12 years down the road, this is the 13th year, the lives of the people have been plunging just further down the hill to the valley of no more, whereas the public officials have been, theirs have been going the opposite direction on the graph, to a point where the central bank governor will declare that 75% of the income of the country was being, used to run.
Was it 75 or 25?
National Assembly alone had 25.
Okay.
And then between the presidency and the 36 bureaucracies, they call the states and the governors, the rest go. And for me, that's even a conservative estimate. What has happened is that from that battle script of 1960, we now have a situation where a tiny band of people have, by the instrumentality of force and subterfuge, knocked into place a law that settles the ownership and control of all of our assets in their hands, and they label it Constitution. What do I mean? By the time Nigeria was put together, there were negotiations between the various territories that the British had conquered and ruled over for some time. They decided to go into a union as a federation in which the three regions of the time, were in charge of their affairs. Each of them had a constitution. And then together in 1960, they distilled a federal constitution. The constitution of those regions were in place almost 4 years before 1960. But when they decided to go together, they were countries of their own. The constitution with which Awolowo managed Western region, with which Okpara managed Eastern region, with which the Sardauna was managing the Northern region, well, just like the constitutions of France and Germany of today, where they were heading towards European Union. But all of that, at that time, of course, that became the golden era of Nigeria, and things went, as they went.
Let's take a short break, Mr. Nnadi. We'll continue on this topic when we return. This is Head to Head on Silverbird Television. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. The program is Head to Head on Silverbird Television, and I have as my guest on this edition of the program, Mr. Tony Nnadi, who is the Secretary, Change Nigeria, and of course, Secretary, Lower Niger Congress. Now, before we went, you were trying to go down memory lane,
yes,
and to tell us how
we came to where we are.
Came to where we are.
I'm still looking at what agenda should be before the president.
Yes.
We're saying that the Nigeria into which all of our peoples federated in 1960 had been replaced by another Nigeria, by a dummy. That Nigeria died in 1966 when those constitutions that defined the project got toppled by soldiers. The attempt to revive that Nigeria failed after the Aburi meetings and the Aburi discussions got abandoned in 1967. Since that time, there have been no effort to revive that Nigeria. What we have had have been decrees upon decrees upon decrees. Finally, decree number 24 of 1999, which they call the 1999 Constitution, and which is why I say we do not have a democracy in place, because democracy, except the definition will change for your Nigeria, the democracy is simply government of the people, by the people, for the people. Those three legs mean that the people make the constitution, that is of the people. By the people mean all of the things you have to do with elections, and for the people means the benefit for the people. Our democracy, so-called democracy, does not pass any of these three legs of test, and that is why from all the indices of human measurement, quality of life, Nigeria is lagging from behind.
So the agenda for the new president, for the new government?
The agenda for the new government, it will be a pity if after all of what happened, and which he, the winner, Mr. President, referred to as sad reminders of the events of 1966, if after all of that he does not call a meeting as urgently as he can muster for us to recommit, to reconstitute Nigeria, he will find a situation where those who are choking in Nigeria will take their portion out of the failed British experiment that you call Nigeria. The union has collapsed. This house has fallen. That is what we are saying. And if we do not work it out together, what will happen is that those who are not happy here would take steps to recover their portions from Nigeria. As long
now, you're sounding
as
like...
long as it is this fraud,
okay,
because this document was made by Abdul Salami Abubakar in 1999. He narrated the story of how he came about it, step by step. It's printed inside the document. And he now comes inside here to lie that we, the people, having firmly and solemnly resolved to live in unity as one indivisible country, do hereby make and give unto ourselves the following constitution. To that extent, this document is a forgery. There's no other definition I know in law of forgery. And therefore, a fraud to say that we, because what that we, the people there, means is that we have agreed to live in this 36-state formation. I did not agree with that with anybody. That we have agreed to be servants of 4 local government areas that will be sharing revenue, from a basket they contribute to almost nothing to. We did not agree that we give the officials immunity. We did not agree that the president and the 36 governors will have spare keys to the treasury. Go and check the appropriation provisions. We did not agree. We couldn't have agreed that the social contract element of the Constitution should be subverted the way it is subverted by Section 6, subsection 6C here. Let me break it down. Under that section, the whole of Chapter 2 of this Constitution creates to tell you how poverty is climbing the hill of Nigeria. The whole of Chapter 2 gives all of the benefits that should go to the citizen, under the social contract scheme. But there's a clause in Section 6, subsection 6C, in this same document that says that nobody can ask whether it's done or not done, meaning that you cannot question whether those things are done, meaning that those rights are cancelled. Further meaning that those in authority do not owe the citizens any obligation for school or hospital or any welfare at all. Let me just land. Okay. I'm just saying that we, the people, could not have made a constitution that excludes responsibility in favor of the citizens in the constitution. We, the people, couldn't have given the spare key of the treasury to the executive, the heads of the executive branch. And we, the people, couldn't have given all of those 37 men and their deputies absolute immunity. So, since they don't owe us any obligation and they have the treasury at their disposal, don't tell me that you saw anybody with any... The EFCC, unfortunately, in the talk of corruption that is going all over the place, they do not understand that corruption is official. It is a far bigger problem than officials being corrupt. Nigeria has become a criminal enterprise to the extent that it is this forged document that has become our constitution. Don't talk about...
So is that how you put it, that corruption is official? It means that...
Yes,
it has been...
corruption is created and protected by your constitution.
Now, if you are on the one hand asking for an amendment of the constitution...
Not amendment.
Okay.
Not amendment. Let me just make that, let me just clear that point, because there's a lot of confusion out there, especially amongst the lawyers in the land who should have been in the forefront of telling the rest of the people why we say the National Assembly has no business with the changes we're talking about. It's not amendment. We are saying that amendment is like this document is in the position of the memo and articles of a company, whereby the peoples that should have been different countries are the shareholders. The Yoruba could be a country of 45 million people. The Igbo Frank can be a country of 50 million people. Anybody else?
So are you calling for a division of the country?
No, we're saying you saw last week or so, Nadeko came out saying that the choices before Nigeria today is either we go back to what we agreed to do originally, that is what they call Aburi, or we go Araba. Araba is to your tent, O Israel. If anybody is obdurate enough to think that this document will be basis of Nigeria for another 4 years or 8 years, that person must be deluded. Because we cannot be united by fraud. We cannot be united by forgery. We cannot be united by corruption.
Now, you do not want an amendment to the Constitution, and you don't also believe that Nigeria should stay together as an indivisible entity. What exactly do you want? Does your group, the Change Nigeria, want?
What we are saying is that Nigeria should be a lot better than it is. The reason why it's not working is that the managers of the enterprise had removed the memo and article that provided for the owners of the enterprise some benefit, and surreptitiously supplanted it with their own memo and article. That was what happened in 1966 when they jettisoned the constitutions that created.
So is it also possible that your group could also be sponsoring some of this violence so that there will be a cause, they will make a cause for you to say that we have to go back?
If not for what we are doing,
yes,
the violence could have been much more widespread. By now there wouldn't be any.
But when there is a violence, then it gives bites to your call for the Sovereign National Conference.
By the time we convened PRONACO in 2005, people were already carrying arms all over the place. Then we took the trouble to go to plead with them and persuade them. You saw how Asari Dokubo came. You saw how Wazirike came. All of those who were carrying arms at the time. We persuaded them to keep the arms and come for a discussion with the rest of the people. If they reject their demand for reversion to true federalism, for reversion to those constitutions that were constitutional arrangements that were toppled since 1966, if they reject it, then they could go do whatever else.
Now
we were lucky. That conference yielded a result that was satisfactory to them.
Okay.
They came along with us to court where we wanted to afford the government of the day the opportunity to do like what South Africa did when the apartheid constitution was rejected, so that peacefully we can walk our way from where we are now. We are not anarchists. Even in the case, I filed that case, even in the case we filed in court, we didn't say they should throw away the constitution because anarchy will come. We say court asked them to go to do a process by which we now sit down and write our constitution. The government in place remains a transitional, the constitution can remain for transitional purposes. The government in place will remain just like the government of de Klerk remains in South Africa for the period it took them to go from apartheid constitution, because what we have here is worse than apartheid constitution. In South Africa, the whites were at least 20% of the population. What we have in place today, less than 1% of the country's population is holding on to more than 90% of the assets of the country. And you cannot break into that circle because they have shut you out by all the things. Look at the people who made all the decrees. Who created the 36 states? It was between Gowon, Murtala Mohammed, Abacha, and Babangida. Where were the rest of the people officers from the rest of the country? If not that it was that 1960 battle script that has been carried out. Who created all the council areas? Who created the 68-item exclusive list on this constitution that make it impossible for a state like Lagos State to generate electricity, to do their railway, to handle their ports, to secure the lives of the people? Somebody will sit in Abuja and say it's IG, Inspector General of Police, for a territory like Nigeria. How does he know who steals goat in Mushi? It doesn't work like that. It will never work. So whatever anybody is saying they want to do about infrastructure is going to fail because those who should be in charge of those things are not in charge of it.
Now let's talk about the Lower Niger Congress.
Yes.
What is it all about? You are the secretary of the Lower Niger Congress. What is it all about?
The Lower Niger Congress, we've all, on a pan-Nigeria basis, been calling for Sovereign National Conference for more than 30 years. In fact, since after the failure of Aburi. Remember, I don't know how old you are. In 1974, when Gowon was about to work out a transition, they drew up a constitution that was based exclusively on the Aburi discussions.
The Aburi Accord.
Yes. Somebody within the system found a way to frustrate it and chucked him out of government, Murtala Mohammed, and then managed to put in place something that led to a totally different constitutional arrangement which they rubber stamped in 1979 as 1979 constitution. Nobody agreed on presidential system. Nobody agreed on all of retaining the states that were created for the purposes we have all seen today. But they were imposed and retained by decree. So what we're saying is that since that time to date, people have been calling for Sovereign National Conference, but those who have secured themselves in the refuge camp of Abuja will not listen.
Tell us about the Lower Congress, because we have the Lower Niger Congress, because we have very few minutes to go.
The Lower Niger Congress is a platform with which the peoples of Old Eastern region and Midwestern region, the ethnic nationalities spread there, Anang, Efik, Ibibio, Urobo, Isekiri, Igbo, have come together to seek to federate on their own terms into a territory they call Lower Niger.
Are you preparing for succession or what?
No, it is in readiness. You don't build a house from the roof. The return to federalism, for those who do not know, must start with the federating units working out their draft constitutions that will then be federated at a meeting. This is in readiness for the inevitable sovereign national conference to reconstitute Nigeria. As we're doing that, I'm sure you read in the press about the Middle Belt and the Middle Belt Congress that were talking about Middle Belt Federation. Because from what happened to them in these elections, they came out to say that they are not any part of any North, as have been all these years, that they are being killed, that they are not welcome in the scheme of things. Therefore, they are going to stand up on their own to make out a constitution for the Middle Belt Federation. The Yoruba had since launched their own draft constitution. So we are at the stage where these three, at least, that believe in democracy are working out their draft constitutions ahead of that meeting. But if that meeting is not called, I can assure you that these three will exercise their right to self-determination by whatever means they find to exercise it. Because
thank you very much.
We cannot be bound by force for all times.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tony Nnadi, for this incisive interview. My guest has been the Secretary Change Nigeria, as well as Secretary Lower Niger Congress, Mr. Tony Nnadi. This is where we say bye-bye on this episode of the program. My name is Victor Ayara.